So, welcome back to another episode of the Data Science Podcast. And today I have the fortunate pleasure of having Tyler Richards back on the podcast. Tyler, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, so good to be back. Yeah, it's been a hot minute, and I really enjoyed the last time that I was on here. And then, basically after we recorded last time, both of us ended up joining Streamlit. So now we're coworkers. So before we were just internet friends, and now we're coworkers. And what a fun transition that is. So, as you mentioned, I'm Tyler. I am a data scientist that currently works at Snowflake. My background is in election science, and I did election science at nonprofits and while I was at university a little bit afterwards as well. And then I went over to Meta to continue on integrity-related work. As I worked more at Meta, I came across the open source library Streamlit and honestly just really liked it. I tried to bring it inside of Meta, played around with it with personal projects, and really just got enamored with the library as a whole. As I was doing that, I started writing online more about my experience with Streamlit, and then a couple of book publishers got in contact with me and were like, "Hey, you're writing a little bit about Streamlit. Do you just want to write a book?" And I was like, "Okay, that sounds great." I'm a big reader. I'm a pretty voracious reader, and so I thought it was like, yeah, this is kind of I wanted to write the book that I always wanted to read. And so I did that. I've published the first version, and then after I published the first version, I joined Streamlit as a data scientist. And then I just recently edited and released the second version of the book a few weeks ago. So that's the gist of it. That's pretty much me. That's a long introduction, but that's pretty much me.
Yeah, awesome. And yeah, definitely check out the first episode of our podcast if you haven't already. And yeah, so I guess you have already provided like the background of who you are, and then your prior role over at Meta. Could you maybe go into a little bit depth into like what did you do at Meta, and then the thought process of actually joining Streamlit?
Yeah. So Meta, I have nothing but positive things to say about my time at Meta. I know that might be a little rare, but I also left right after or right before all of the kind of cycle that they've been going through with optimization and cost optimization and layoffs and the stock price going down and all this other, like, there's definitely been a big vibe shift in Meta after I left. But I left long before a lot of that was happening. And so I had I had a really good time. I learned a lot about how to work within a big organization, a lot about how to do data science, how to work with engineering partners and product partners, and really learned a whole lot there. My actual role was in the integrity space. And so lots of stuff gets uploaded to Facebook and Instagram every single day, every single second. And there is a very, very strong desire to get the worst of the worst content off of these platforms, both because it's a bad user experience and it's also bad for business as well. Like, no advertiser wants to have their ad showing up right next to hate speech or right next to nudity or right next to like terrorist content or all these other related things. And so there's huge teams at Meta that are frankly the best in the world at taking content down that breaks Meta's rules. And because there's so much content, you can't just pay people to take down the content, to like look at it and take it down. You have to create these like very, very efficient, stable machine learning models that will look at a piece of content and take it down. And then I'll also be able to say, hey, we're 85% sure that this is hate speech, that this post is hate speech. Why don't we go and we send it to an expert that we know is really good at detecting if this is hate speech or not? And, the next piece of content, it might be, we're actually 92% sure that this is hate speech. We might actually take that one down because we think that it's going to get 10,000 views in the next 30 minutes or something. So those are the sorts of like very complicated questions, because they really were the intersection of like social science and the questions of, well, what does it mean to have a rule? on Facebook? Like, what does it mean for us to preserve free expression and free speech? What does it mean for the business community on Facebook? What does it mean for different populations? Like, what is hate speech? What is hate speech is a really like hard question. And so my main projects were focused on measurement. So are we doing a good job at all that work, or are we doing a bad job? That like is really what it came down to. That work was, man, I mean, the pros and cons of that work are definitely sharp. I would say everyone that I talked to while I was a data scientist there had an opinion about meta integrity. Or this is when it was called Facebook, so this is pre-meta, but everyone had an opinion. Everyone was like, oh, you guys are doing a blank job at this, either great or terrible, or they'd be like, oh, you take down too much content, and then I would be in California, right? I'd be in California and people would be like, oh my God, you guys are not taking down nearly enough content. You need to be taking down blank, 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 whatever, side that I don't agree with, you need to take down all their stuff. And then I would go back to and hang out with my family in Florida, and I would, see a bunch of, friends that I grew up with. And then they would all say, oh, you guys are taking down way too much content in, X, Y, and Z area. And so no one was ever neutral about how we were handling speech at Meta. So that was fun because everyone has an opinion on your job. And then annoying because I have the same conversations about my job with everyone. And yeah, so that was my background at Meta. It was really useful to be in election science beforehand because I already had a lot of background in handling those problems at a much smaller scale. But I mean, with Meta, you just get you're like, oh, if I change the precision on this machine learning model by 0.1%, that literally over the course of the year might affect billions of posts. So yeah, wild place. If you're looking for scale, there's no place like Meta. I'll tell you what. I mean, right. Google, but Google and Meta are like scale.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sounds pretty amazing. Like like the work that you were doing, and
hard
affects the entire population of the world.
It really does. It's like basically almost everyone. I mean, right now there are more smartphones than there are people on the face of the earth, and more than half of people in the world use Facebook every month. I think that's probably about right. If I'm not exactly right, I'm close. Or use a Facebook product. If you combine WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram, you're touching almost everyone outside of mainland China. That's pretty much it. It's wild.
Yeah, definitely. And could you walk us through your thought process of you joining Streamlit?
Yeah. So as I was at Meta, and kind of one of my constant, there's like two sides to this, right? Where side number one is I had a strong desire to join a very early stage company because within Meta, I definitely felt free to do, I felt free to, work on integrity related problems and integrity measurement related problems. But if there were like other problems that I thought were really pressing, I kind of had to stay in my lane, which is good. Like the whole point of being of a very good large tech company and large business is that you produce organizations that are predictable. Like I can predict what this organization is going to produce in 3 to 6 months, because otherwise it just makes it very hard to run the business as a whole. And the point of a very small startup is to do some things that are a little bit unpredictable. So you want to, have these big step changes in production. You want to be able to move people at a moment's notice into a more critical area of the company. And so I just wanted to be in a space that was just a little bit faster. And I wanted that experience for myself. In terms of Streamlit itself, I mean, I joined because I love the product. Like I used the product and I said, this is awesome. I don't want to be creating data science work outside of Streamlit ever again. So the number one way to guarantee that no one will make me use a tool that is other than Streamlit is to work at Streamlit. Because of course, I'm just going to be creating Streamlit tools all the time. So I joined because I love the product. After I wrote the book, some of the founders reached out. I would, chat with Adrian, once a month, or we had like a bi-weekly call where we talked about feedback and, all this other stuff. And yeah, so then when they started hiring data scientists, they were like, would you like to join? And I was like, yeah, yeah, I would. Yeah, I would. So that was I wish it was like more difficult, or like, it was super complicated and whatever else. But I mean, I love the product. I believed in it a lot. And this company was out there wanting to increase the number of Streamlits that were out there. So it was like very much a perfect fit for the thing that I was looking for. So I'm glad they said yes. I'm glad that, otherwise I would have just been like, all right, well, I guess I just like Streamlit from afar, which would have been okay. But it was definitely a very good fit for me.
Awesome. Yeah. I do remember, I guess we joined Streamlit about approximately the same time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I left academia in November, and then end of November I joined Streamlit. 2021. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. It was like yeah. I mean, you're in exactly the same boat, right? Where you were like, hey, I really like this product.
Exactly. Yeah.
I want more people to be using this. I want to use this on a regular basis. Like, it totally makes sense.
Definitely.
Same thing with a few other people, right? Well, like Johannes is a great example where he made a really cool app. The GitHub Stars app was excellent. And that
the machine learning generator app.
Yeah, exactly. Machine learning generator app. That thing's amazing. That could have been a small business all on its own. Like, so cool. So for everyone listening, he had these two apps, one of which he finished in like a few days over like this break, where it just like looked through all of your GitHub history, and then it like ran a nice analysis on your GitHub history, and then showed it to you, and then you could tweet about it. And that thing went so viral, like so fast. I saw it everywhere, all over Twitter. People were like looking at, entering their own GitHub username and just going after it. It was awesome. And he made this other app that is like this machine learning generator, where you could kind of upload a data set or upload, click a bunch of different like questions, and then it would create all of this Python code that would train and then use and then infer a machine learning model for you based on your data set. So it was like, this is so sick.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, I mean, we're talking about like how we joined Streamlit, and then how we love Streamlit. Yeah, so I guess this brings us to our next question which is, in your opinion, how can Streamlit help one find a job role?
Yeah, the easiest, the way that I think about it now is basically Streamlit is an unbelievable way to stand out in a job application process or before a job application process. So as I was like, working at Meta every 6 months or something, I would go out into the job market and just kind of like see what was out there and, test the waters. And I found that, and I don't know if other people like have this same feeling, but I always felt like just applying to 1,000 jobs with a blanket resume just like didn't work. Like my hit rate is just low, and I don't want to get like just one of the 1,000 jobs that I'm applying for. I want a set of jobs there's like 5 jobs that I really care about and I would really love to work at. And so for me, it made so much more sense to spend more time on a smaller number of applications that I cared about, rather than like almost no time on a bunch of applications that I like, most of which I couldn't even tell you that much about the company. So when I was doing that, I was like, all right, well, how do I stand out in front of a recruiter? Okay, I can have a cool GitHub, but recruiters can't code. So if I show them like, oh, there's this awesome Python file or Jupyter notebook, there's no way they're going to know if it's impressive or not, right? Like, they're going to make 3 or 4 clicks, get into a Jupyter notebook, and then, wow, they use pandas really efficient. Like, there's no way they're going to be able to assess if I'm good or not. So then I'm like, all right, well, I went to a US university, which was definitely a benefit, but the University of Florida where I went to it's not like a one of the fancy private schools. It's not like a Harvard or a Yale or something. So I don't have that brand name that would make everyone say, all right, well, we got to interview this guy now because he went to Stanford. So I didn't have that. I'm like, all right, well, how do I what? And then I worked at Meta, but even before I worked at Meta, it was like I had worked at Procter and Gamble, which is cool, but no one thinks of them as like, wow, they produced the best data scientists in the whole world. Like no one thinks that. So I'm like, all right, well, how do I stand out? And I realized, well, if I can create a data product that someone can click on and see something cool really fast, then they'll be impressed. And they'll be like, wow, they created this for me. How did they create this whole website just for me? Like it's an app and I can mess around with it. Like that's awesome. And with Streamlit, it's honestly not that hard, right? Where you can create 5 apps that, whether it's, some data science project that you've done already, where it has some nice markdown, some nice explanations, a cool map, something that people can click on, like that is doable for, a small set of applications. Where if I was like before Streamlit, if I was trying to show off something and create a whole website, that would be, or like, I create an awesome API or like a Django app or something, it would be like, that's too much work for an individual application. So like the way that I saw it and my hit rate of like applying for jobs, or once I was in the job application process, usually there's like a data science project part of it, just doing that in Streamlit and then sending them the link. That hit rate was really high. People were very impressed by it. And so that's kind of just like a little bit of alpha in a way that hopefully so many people start doing this that in the long term, like it's not, everyone expects people to create Streamlits as part of their job application process. But for now, I think there's a lot of alpha in just, hey, I'm going to create an app for you. And then like, just imagine it from a recruiter's perspective. I don't have to see a lot of their code. I know that they can create something cool because they created something cool and here it is. Like it's right here. This person definitely knows how to code. So that's the main way that I think about it at the moment. So I strongly encourage people to just try it out. Like just try it with two companies, right? Where find a way to make a Streamlit app for them, someone that you really want to work for. Find someone at the company that you think are going to click on your link, email them or find them on LinkedIn or something and say, hey, I saw you had this job opening for United Airlines data analyst. I pulled the flight history of the past 1,000 flights and, found this cool model that predicted blank. Here it is. Or something, whatever it is. Or I just did a cool visualization that I thought was pretty and helped me understand, flight patterns in the United States better or something. Like whatever it is, just something like that is going to make you it's going to make you so much better than anyone else that's applying to these jobs. Most people that are applying to these jobs put no effort in. They just toss a resume in a pool and then they leave it. So you can be in the top 1% of jobs very easily. Applications very easily. So I don't know if I obviously haven't gone around searching for jobs in a hot minute, but yeah, that's like how I started to do it. And one thing that I talk about, I have a chapter in the book about hey, here's an actual thing that I did that helped me get an offer at a place. Yeah, so that's the gist of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's like a hack that I think not a lot of people know about it, and the listeners now and yeah, it's like it makes me think of kind of like a cheat code, like how you could use that to leverage and up your profile and provide instant value to the company that you're interested in applying for. Yeah, I mean that's certainly a great tip. Yeah, you touched upon writing your book. Could you go over the process of writing a book and the thought process of you actually writing the book and the daily routine? And then finally, maybe would you consider writing another book?
Yeah.
You already have 2 books.
Yeah. So I would say the process was actually remarkably straightforward, where you, at least for me, what made sense for me is I designate time in my day and I say, okay, the only thing I'm going to do for this hour or this 2-hour block or this 45-minute block is blank. And then I worked until that time was over and then I left. And then I did that. I didn't just like, do this forever. And so I just had designated times throughout the week where I'd be like, all right, this is my writing time. This is what I'm going to do. The process of editing the book, like for the second version, a lot of that was stuff that I'd been, thinking about. And so to give you a bit more background, when I wrote the first version, I used Streamlit as kind of a hobby where, hey, this isn't something that I'm doing every day, all day, but this is whenever I can find an excuse to make a Streamlit app, I'm going to make it. And so my number of hours making Streamlit apps was higher than most people, for sure. But then after I joined Streamlit, I spend all of my time at Streamlit. It is a primary data product that we produce. Like that's the only thing that I produce these days. It's like sometimes I'll make a notebook, but most of the time I'm going to make a Streamlit. And so for the second version, my goal was, okay, can I take all the things that I've learned from making Streamlits every single day for the past year and a half, and can I like add that to the book in a way that a beginner and an intermediate person can understand easily, so that all the mistakes that I've made, they don't have to make. Like they don't have to make these mistakes. I can just figure it out. So that was the kind of like the process of learning enough to be able to have stuff to write about. And then the actual writing experience is just time. So it's as long as you're willing to dedicate time, you can do it. I've kind of like, I think that the reason I wrote it is kind of what I said before, which is I believe for me, the best way for me to learn is to sit down and focus on one thing for an extended period of time. I do not learn very well from 20 minutes of this, don't touch it for 2 days, 20 minutes of this, don't touch it for 6 days, 20 minutes of this, don't touch it. And I just don't really learn well that way. I know a lot of other people that do. And a lot of other people learn well from audio or from video. Like think of the number of people that you've helped with this YouTube channel, right? Where so many people learn from video tutorials and they love it. And that helps them a whole lot. I don't that well, honestly. So I do a bit, but I don't that much, right? So for me, I was like, all right, well, my ideal learning setup is long form, it's focused, and it takes you A to Z, right? That's how I want to learn. And for Streamlit, there was kind of no way of doing that. And so that was the main reason. And so the reason for version 2 is really Streamlit was on 0.87, and like the book, the first version used 0.87 or 0.67, I forget exactly. And now Streamlit is on 1.26, 1.27, maybe 1.28. So there's been 50 updates since in that time. And so, yeah, there's so many different features that are just released. And I have all this new experience from using Streamlit and learning about and just like using it every day. So that's the main, like my main thought for writing the second version. The question of like whether or not to do it again is really hard. For me, I think I'm very excited for lots of other people to make really awesome Streamlit books. And as lots of other people are making really awesome Streamlit books, then I'm excited to support those Streamlit books and not have to write like more Streamlit books. I, especially as a data scientist, I'm like, okay, well, this is great. I think like I enjoy doing data science a little bit more than I do writing. And so I kind of doubt that I will like continue too long in the writing sphere. So I'm not exactly sure, but my goal is that I get to support lots of other people writing really awesome Streamlit books and tell everyone go and look at those instead of mine, 2 years from now or something.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, certainly your book is amazing, and it's a great resource for anyone looking to get started. And
Thank you.
yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate to be able to look at your book and read the entirety of it. And I do say it's kind of like having a mentor, like sitting beside you, because like the way that you've written it, it's not like a typical book. It's more like you're talking to a friend, and then you're guiding your friend like step by step, and then you're incrementally building up the app, and then you're taking us along the thought process of here is a new feature, and then why are we adding it here, and what's like the caveat of that, and how we could incrementally improve upon it.
Yeah, I wonder when we were going to get to that point when we revealed that you are the technical editor of this book, which is so kind and so nice. And you spent so much time on it and did such a good job. Like there are so many typos and edits and like code stylistic things, and like the fundamentals of it are so much better because of the work that you did. And so it's like, I mean, I just like, I try to thank you every time I can, but yeah, I'll thank you to the ends of the earth. I really appreciate it. It's so nice.
Yeah, certainly my pleasure. And yeah, I get a new chance to learn more about Streamlit. And, it's kind of interesting to, like when you already know about something, but then when you're relearning it, you get to see it at a different angle. And in doing that, it kind of, provides fresh viewpoints to the existing technology that you are already familiar with, but then not really familiar in some aspect. And yeah, I guess it's a great way to learn in a holistic way.
Yeah. The way that I've explained it in the past of like my learning style, and the way that I try to the way that I try to approach this book is that there's a lot of people really like kind of a Swiss cheese method of learning, where you have a bunch of different slices of cheese and there's holes in each one. But then if you lay them all on top of each other, if you lay out enough slices, you're going to double learn. There's going to be sections where every section has no holes. Like if you just like look straight down on it, because, you get a little bit from each one. And a lot of people love to learn that way. I do not. I just want one slice of cheese that has no holes in it. That's what I'm most interested in. So I tried to like write a book that just gives you one slice of cheese, no holes, not really the Swiss cheese method. But I don't know if that makes any sense as an analogy or not, but that's like how I've tried to think about it.
Yeah, love the analogy. I mean, when we're talking about this, it kind of lead me to think about like, what are your advice on how one could use Streamlit for work?
Yeah. Well, so there's a couple different things, right? So in since version 1, Streamlit got acquired by Snowflake, and so that's why both of us currently work for Snowflake. You've got a Snowflake shirt on, perfect. Yeah, exactly, perfect. So that we have this product inside Snowflake that we just called Streamlit for Snowflake, and what that does is it essentially will handle all of the difficulties in hosting, as well as data connection and sharing, and all the annoying things about like deploying apps within work are mostly related to, can I get my IT team to set up an EC2 instance and then host it, and how do I do all the security around it, and how do I get access to my data and make sure my data has access to this? How do I make sure I'm not actually accidentally leaving some port open and then someone else can access it and I didn't even know? Like all of that stuff is kind of difficult. And so Snowflake just said, hey, we'll figure it out for you. Like we'll do all that annoying stuff so you don't have to touch it. And you can just go into your Snowflake account and start writing Python code, and there it's your Streamlit, and you can press a little share button, and then great, you can share it with your colleagues, your product managers, whoever else. And so honestly, that's the hardest part about like using Streamlit for work, is all of the work-related security hosting things. That said, that's probably like the biggest pitch. I'm also a biased pitch person because that's the product that I work on, right? Like that's what I've spent the past 9 months messing around with, to try and get this product to a state where Like, we're happy with it, and we think it's like the best way to use Streamlit at work. That said, Streamlit is an open source project. Streamlit's going to remain an open source project. It is free to use. You can grab it. You can go and host it on your own instance. You can host it on a Hugging Face space. Hugging Face has Hugging Face for Work too, so you can make Streamlit apps inside of Hugging Face. You can do it inside of Heroku. You can do it right inside of AWS, right? If you want to have all the knobs and be able to, make all of the little intricate decisions yourself, you absolutely can do that. And I think there are lots of places online where you can learn how to deploy an app on AWS. There's a section in my book about how to deploy an app on Heroku, and also for Hugging Face as well. So I'm not here to say, the only way that you can use Streamlit at work is inside of Snowflake. Like, no, that's not what it is, and it's not the intent. The intent either. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest way to use Streamlit for work. Is like the hardest thing is figuring out deployment, security, sharing. Where does my data sit? All of that stuff.
Right. Yeah, certainly. And yeah, so yeah, Streamlit is ubiquitous, and it's not only on a specific platform, but everywhere. And yeah, so I guess it's now time to move on to the next question, which is, if you were going to learn Streamlit again, how would you do it?
Yeah. Well, it depends on how. Let me think. Honestly, the actual question, the actual answer to this is, the first place I would go to docs.streamlit.io. Mm-hmm. That's where our docs page is. Our docs page is amazing. It's really good. There's a bunch of people there that do an excellent job about creating and maintaining just a delightful documentation page. And I would start there before I would even think about going to all the different ways to consume Streamlit content and learn Streamlit. So I would pip install Streamlit, I would look at the docs, and I would try it out myself and just see how it feels. And I would, go through the different widgets, and maybe there's a little getting started section in the docs that I think is really good, that just here's how you pip install something. Here's how you, start create a new Python file. Here's how you run it as a Streamlit app, all that really basic stuff. And so I would start there. And then if I felt, I'm actually missing a lot of the ecosystem, I actually, if I really like to read and reading was my best way that I wanted to learn, I would go and I would, buy my book and read it that way. Right. That would be the way that I would go. If I really liked consuming video content, I would go to your channel, and then I would also go to Fanilla's channel. Fanilla's channel is really good too. I think both of your channels are I've definitely watched quite a few of the videos and learned something new, and I think it's a great and entertaining way to learn as well. So if I was doing video content, I would definitely go to those two places. I've seen some other YouTube channels. I forget exactly. We can link them below as well, but I think Avra has a YouTube channel that is quite good. I enjoy that. I've seen a couple of videos there, and then I know there are some other videos that I'm kind of forgetting right now, but I really like all of them. So I'm a fan. So I'd start there, and then my main thing is I would find a project that I cared about, and then just tried to make it at Streamlit. So whatever it is, just have a little project, and it learning is more fun when you're trying to learn to do something. If you're just trying to learn in a vacuum, and you're all right, well, I'm just learning to learn. It's kind of why am I doing this? If I have something in front of me that I want to create an app to blank, I want to analyze my Goodreads history. I want to create an app so that other people can analyze their Goodreads history. That was my first project in Streamlit. What we were talking about with Johannes, he was I want to see my GitHub history. Great. I want to create an app so other people can see their GitHub history. Awesome. Those are perfect. That's exactly what you should be, where you should really be looking for. Find a project, mess around with it, see if you can do it. and do something manageable and have fun with it. That would be my go-to.
Yeah. And a point to note is that the Goodreads app that you've created, I think it went viral and it's amongst one of the top pages for Streamlit apps.
Yeah. I would say it's probably a little biased because it's on our website. It's
Exactly.
IO, and so if people click on that, so I think that is like a big source of the virality. But yes, it went kind of viral when I released it at first. Yeah, that went well.
Right.
Yeah, I think that many people read these days, so a lot of people wanted to analyze their Goodreads history.
Yeah, or we analyze their YouTube viewing history, right?
Yeah,
or Spotify.
Oh yeah, Tyler Simons, another data scientist that works on our team, made a very nice Spotify app that I think is really cool. We can link it in the comments as well. But it's pretty. It's a really beautiful app.
Awesome, amazing. Yeah, it's kind of like whenever we have any wild ideas, and then it's like, we could make a Streamlit app.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it's Python, right? So like Python, it's like what can you do in Python? Pretty much anything. You can pretty much anything. Like as long as you can do it on a computer, like it's a Turing complete language. Like you're fine. Like you could probably figure it out.
Yeah. Speaking of which, how did you learn Python? Did you learn it at school or did you self-taught yourself?
Oh man, I learned Python. Well, all right. So the actual answer is I started with R. And I learned R, and I did that because I was in a lot of stats classes, and those stats classes use R. And so that was like my main language, my bread and butter. And then I went to Procter & Gamble, and as I got to Procter & Gamble, basically I was like, I had interviewed with them, and they had accepted me, and I was originally going to be a data analyst. And I wanted to be a data scientist, but I was going to be a data analyst. And then I got this phone call like a few weeks before my internship. They called me. And it was this guy named John. His name is John Robinall. He was one of the data scientists there. And he called me and he was like, "Hey, Tyler, I'm going to be your intern manager. But we're trying to figure out if we should have you as a data science intern or we should have you as a data analyst intern." And I was like, "Okay." And he was like, "Do you want to be a data science intern or data analyst intern?" And I was like, "Well, I want to be a data scientist, so I think I want to be a data science intern." He was like, "Okay, do you know Python?" And I was like, "Not really." And he was like, "Oh, well, then I don't know if that's going to work." And I was like, "Oh, but I can learn. I can figure it out." And I was like, "I know R. R is going to be close." And he was like, "Okay, well, if you can figure out Python, then you can be a data science intern." And I was like, "Okay, I'll figure out Python." And that was it. And then I was like, "Oh my God, I got to figure out Python." And then I just scrambled around trying to learn Python for like 3 weeks. And then so I just, went online, read all the books that I could figure out, like kind of just like freaked out, and scrambled to figure it out. And then, and then it was fine. Python's pretty close to R, so it's okay. It's not the biggest deal in the world. And then so I interned with John for 2 summers. It was great. He was such a great internship intern manager. And then as I was doing that, I started contracting for this nonprofit that's called Protect Democracy. They did a lot of very cool, very important work, and it was very related to a bunch of research that I had done as an undergrad. And so my Python was good, but it wasn't it was like a data scientist Python. It was not like a software engineer's Python. So everything I wrote was messy. I barely wrote any functions. It was just in Jupyter. It was okay. It is not you're not building systems. You're just building kind of scripts in Jupyter or something. So then Sam, this guy named Sam Royston, he was the kind of head engineer on Protect Democracy, and he basically spent we would just pair program together, and he knew Python unbelievably well. And so then we would just sit there, and then I would watch him code, and I'd be like, "Wow, this is amazing. Look at this guy. this guy's really coding. That's a real thing." And then we switch, and I would have to code, and I'd be like, "I don't know how to do anything." And he'd be like, "No, you should do it this way. Oh no, you should name your variable differently. Oh, actually Python can do it this way. Oh, well, this is what a dunder is, and all this other stuff." And you just sat there and taught me for a summer. And so between all of that, then that's how I learned Python. I don't know, that's too long, but I remember freaking out over the phone because I was like, I want to be a data science intern. I got to learn Python. I only know R.
And you did it in only 3 weeks, right? That's super amazing.
Good after 3 weeks, but I was like, yeah, know kind of how to do some stuff.
Yeah, very inspirational. Yeah.
Scary.
I mean, yeah, and like, and then you over the years, you mentioned about like your experience doing the pair programming and how you enhance your programming, and then now that you're working full time as a data scientist at Meta, at Streamlit, at Snowflake, and more and more experience under your belt.
Reps is a great one, and the other thing is that keeping your feedback loops really tight. So like, we have a data scientist engineer on our team. His name is Zachary, and he's like a really good programmer. And so I get to hang out with him a lot, and he sees a lot of my code, and then he'll say, oh, I think maybe you should do this a little bit differently, or maybe you should do this a little bit differently. Nicest guy. And so it's just like super helpful to have him reviewing the stuff that I'm working on and getting that good feedback from people that know more about Python than you. And so reps plus feedback equal, you're going to get better at it. Like, you're just definitely going to get better at it. I don't think there's any way that you get worse at something by doing it more and having feedback from people that are better than you. Like, I cannot imagine getting worse at something having those two things. Whether that's at work or whether that's online, like posting more stuff online and getting people to look at it and review it, or like however that is, especially if you're starting out with Python, almost everyone that codes in Python is better than you. So it's not that hard to find someone that will at least look at it and be like, oh, is this good? Is this bad? Should I do it this way? Should I do it another way? So that's kind of the gist of it. And I think that's also the thing I should have sought as when I was younger is, I stumbled into places where I got that good feedback, but seeking out quality mentorship from not like, oh yeah, I meet with this mentor once a month and he's this super senior person at this company and they're a mentor. Like, that mentorship is fine and dandy, but like the mentorship of like, I know this person, they're willing to sit down with me right next to me and we can code on something. Like, that's a mentorship that is like really would have been useful. Getting a lot more of that, when I was a bit younger.
Yeah. Super amazing. Would you have any advice for the listeners? Like, how could one find a mentor?
Well, I guess I've never asked someone to mentor me and it's gone well. So I don't know if that's the greatest way of doing it. And I've seen people that try to do it that way and I don't see it really succeeding that well. I think a lot of it is, it's got to be two-way, right? Like, these people helped me in part because they knew I could help them eventually too. Like, I showed that I was earnest, I was intellectually curious, and I wanted to do well at an internship or help them with this job or something. And so you want to find win-win situations with other people that are more experienced with you. And so I think the only advice that I have is it's probably not going to go super well if you just email random people who you've never talked to and just say, will you be my mentor? Please. Like, my only advice is that hasn't worked out for me. But what has worked out for me is, hey, these people are willing to invest in someone in part because they want to do something good, in part because they also want to get something out of it. And finding more of those situations is key. At least it's been key for me. But that said, like, who knows? Like, I'm an N of one. I don't know if my experience is actually the best way of doing things. I don't know if my experience is, reflective of other people. I can just tell you, my story, and if that helps, then great. But if it doesn't, then sorry.
Yeah, super helpful, indeed, and I think it will be very valuable for the listeners. Yeah, so I think we're breezing through our questions. And yeah, recently you released this amazing Streamlit component called STPwall. Could you tell us a little bit about it and like your thought process of how you actually, came up with the idea and how did you actually create the component?
Yeah. So one thing that's kind of been in the back of my head for at least a year, if not longer, is I don't understand why there aren't a bunch of data scientists that are making money online with data science projects. Like I see software engineers do it, right? Like every other week on Twitter, I'm sitting there and there's some software engineer out there that is like, I have made $2,000 this week with my cool little app or something. And they're like, I just hit an MRR of like $5,000. That's awesome. That's so great. Why do I never see a data scientist doing that? Like, and so there's a few options in my mind. Either data science is not that valuable, right? And possibility. Two, data science is only valuable inside companies that spit off lots of data. And so doing it outside of companies is kind of impossible. Or three, there's like a skill issue or a capacity issue where it's like, oh, well, data scientists could be able to do this, but they're missing something. And so I thought, and I still think that Streamlit is a unique and excellent avenue for this type of work, for a cool, like you make some cool large language model prompt, but you don't want to sell that prompt, but you just want to sell access to it. So if you can do that in Streamlit, why not charge people like, $10 a month, or say, hey, give me $20 and I'll give you access to this app. So I tried to do that in Streamlit, and I realized, oh, actually, that's pretty hard. That's actually really hard to do because you have to do authentication, right? You have to do all the connections with the different payment providers. You have to depending on how much you're charging and what you're doing, you might have to set up an actual business, like with Stripe or something, like use like Stripe Atlas or whatever else. Like these things it's not trivial. It's definitely not trivial. So I created STPwall as hey, let's just see if people let's see if I can break down some of these hypotheses, and let's see if I can make it a little bit easier for people to collect money online for their cool science work. My goal is that I want to see lots of Streamlit developers that are making either a full-time living or a part-time living with the cool work that they're doing, right? Like I want it to be like the App Store, where you see all these indie developers that have created a cool little app. Like you remember those initial iPhone apps when I didn't even have an iPhone, I had an iTouch, right? And they had the little, the dumb apps. Like there was one app that went viral that was like, oh, just buy this app to prove to other people that you're rich. And they just charged like $10,000 for your app, for the app, or something crazy, or like $1,000 for the app. And they made so much money. Or another silly little app that was like, oh, this app will help you, like it just like is a fake beer drinker. And it just had a nice, cool animation when you tip it, right? Like you remember those things, or like, or like all these other random like iPhone apps. Like I want that for data science, where people can make cool little silly things and then make some money off it. And then eventually not silly things like Uber. Like Uber is on the App Store, like it is the App Store, right? So like you need that, or Facebook or Airbnb or like other things. Like these are apps first. Airbnb probably less so, but Uber, yes. Facebook, yes. Facebook exists on the App Store. So I want, and that's like a very high aspiration. That's pretty ambitious for what Streamlit is. But in order to do that, we kind of I wanted it to make it easier for people to accept money online. That's that's the gist of it. And so STPwall is a way where you can basically use this library, add a bunch, add these, a couple little calls that will do Google authentication. And then the second thing that it'll do is it'll check if the user that signed in with their Google account, if they're one of your subscribers on Stripe, if they paid for this product already. And if they're not, then it prompts them to pay for it. And if they don't pay for it, then they can't see it. So that's kind of the gist of it. It's not the most complicated thing in the whole world. But yeah, I tested it out. I think it works pretty well, and it's just something that has been scratching at the back of my brain for years now. So I know I'll have more products and more thoughts on this in the future, but this is kind of a first iteration of it.
Yeah, super super cool. And yeah, definitely. I was also wondering, a year or two ago, and then I think I asked over on Twitter, like, does anyone know how we could connect our Streamlit app? Is there any component available? And at the time, there were none. And yeah, here we are today, and it's super exciting to see that and how you could help to unlock, new avenues of content creators, Streamlit app creators to monetize and maybe make a living out of it, right?
Hopefully. Yeah. Or just make $10. Like, just making $10 online is addictive. Like, as soon as you make $10, you're like, all right, I'm going to want to make 100. Like,
right.
At that point, it'd be really cool.
Right. Definitely. And yeah, so we've reached our last question, which is like, what are some advice that you would like to give to your younger self?
I think so this is probably outside of Streamlit, but the one thing that I value in people a lot, or two things, are curiosity and kindness. And I would tell myself to be more curious and be more kind. Those are the two biggest things. And so Streamlit is a way where I embrace my curiosity about the world, about the people around me. And if I do that in a kind way, then I think that's the advice that I would give my younger self.
So it's a big pleasure to have you on the podcast. And this is not the first time, right? It's the second time. And yeah, I do appreciate this. And hopefully we could have you for, subsequent times, third time, fourth time, fifth time.
Who knows? Well, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's always so fun to talk with you, now here in the podcast, at work, whatever. So I'm sure on Twitter, who knows?
Right.
It's good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and it's super amazing to, in the last iteration, we were, internet friends, and now we're actually, like working in the same company.
Yeah. Right. So, who knows what's going to happen before the third time on this podcast? Something crazy, I assume.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and so would you like to tell the listeners how they could reach you?
So I'm just Tyler J. Richards on Twitter. That's probably the easiest place to reach me. We'll put links to all the stuff that we talked about in the description or in the comments or somewhere. I'm not a YouTuber. I don't know. Like, we'll figure it out. And then, the best place to find me is on Twitter. You can find my email there. My email is just my username on Twitter @gmail.com. That's a great place to, if you want to chat about anything. And then there are other social platforms, but I'm mostly a Twitter guy. So that's right. The gist of it. We'll link the book. I felt kind of weird about, accepting money while being for a book, while being also this is just a weird thing about me, not anything else, but we're just going to donate the proceeds of the book to Pie Ladies. So that's the gist of that. And that's me. That's all the stuff here.
Yeah, that's super amazing. And we will provide the links to all of the social platforms that Tyler is on, and also the link to his book. Yeah, so do definitely check it out.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.